It's exciting, isn't it? In fact, to me, it makes sense. When my daughter was only 16 weeks old, so 16 months old, so almost 1.5, she got an earache. And I was a nurse. I'd been trained as a nurse. And even though I was trying to live a natural lifestyle, I didn't know what to do when they get sick. So my friend said, "You got to take her to the doctor." They said, "Don't play with the ears, she'll go deaf." So I have to tell you that I went to the doctor because of this. Yeah? I didn't want my child to go deaf. So she was put on a course of antibiotics, yeah? And the earache went away. When she'd finished the antibiotics, the earache came back. What do? I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. And of course the pressure comes, she'll go deaf. So I went back to the doctor. 6 weeks later, 4 courses of antibiotics later, the earache comes back. Now what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. But I'm back at the doctor because I don't know what else to do. That's why if a mother rings me, a mother rang me last night, 9 o'clock at night, I thought, 9 o'clock at night. They're in New Zealand, they're on holidays, her 13-year-old son tripped on the pot-belly stove and his whole arm is burnt. Do you know, I love those calls. I love them because I know what it's like. You don't know what to do. The good news is they did what I said, and this morning the mother rang me in tears. They've taken it off and there's raw bits. I said, fantastic. It's not as bad as I thought. Oh, she was so relieved. I said, just do this. I said, ring me. How I love helping mothers to know what to do. And you know what? Next time her child gets a burn, will she need to ring me? And then people can ring her. You see, that's how we learn. So as the doctor is writing the 5th script of antibiotics, I said to him, "So, my daughter's going to be on antibiotics for the rest of her life, is she? Am I coming to that conclusion?" He was challenged by my question. So he wrote a referral to an ear, nose and throat specialist. The ear, nose and throat specialist said, the child's teething. Give her these drops to keep her eustachian tubes clear, and there were no more earaches. Let's fast forward 2 years. Next child, 18 months old, gets an earache. I don't tell anyone, because if I tell anyone, what's going to happen? Pressure. But I have to do something. So I was 25, and the lady that lived next door was 85. So I went into her, I said, "What did your mother used to do when you were a little girl and you got an earache?" She said, "Mum would steam up an onion on a stove." I steamed up the onion on the stove, I wrapped it on his ear, he slept for 2 hours. What does that tell you? Out of pain. When he woke up, he was happy. That's it. No wonder I went into natural remedies. 6 weeks, 4 courses of antibiotics, and a 2-hour sleep with an onion on the ear. Wow. Do you know the body's designed to heal itself if you give it the right conditions? No wonder my catchword is that, and my other catchword is, the only hope of better things on planet Earth is the education of the people in right principles. This body's been designed to heal. So what we need to know now is how it does it, and what we can do to work with it so that the body will heal. So let's have a look at what antibiotics are. And I've got some good news. I married Michael 21 years ago. He had 2, I had 6. We've raised our 8 children with no antibiotics, and they're all still alive. Except for that first situation. And that little girl, who was 16 months old, she's 42 now and she's got 6 children. And guess what? None of them have had antibiotics. And they've all had the childhood illnesses and ailments, but there are lots of little things you can do to heal that. To heal it, the body heals it. You just got to give it the right conditions. And so, you're probably on the end of your seat, but what did I tell the woman to do with the burn, yeah? Well, I said, have you got Epsom salt? She said, yes. I said, make a saturated Epsom salt solution. Every home should have Epsom salts. Easy. How do you make a saturated solution? You keep putting the crystals in and stirring it till they dissolve. And when you get to the point where it won't dissolve anymore, you've got a saturated solution of Epsom salts. I said, cut up a t-shirt into a size of the arm, soak it in it, and put 3 layers on. Make it fairly wet, put Glad wrap round it and bandage it. And she said in the morning, the little boy said there is no pain. He had 2 raw bits there, but I said just keep putting that on and it will heal. You could also put aloe vera on. They're the 2 best for burns. What's an antibiotic? In 1928, Alexander Fleming was growing bacteria in flasks in his laboratory. He came in one morning and all the bacteria was dead. And he knew Newton's third law of motion. To every action, there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why has his bacteria died? Don't you love that why? That's how we find out. He looked around, nothing in the laboratory could have done it. There was an open window, and in the open window, he saw the sun coming in, and the sun had a heavy dust on it, and that dust was landing on his bacteria. So he investigated the source of this dust. And on the next story, there was an open window, and in the open window, there was a plate of fruit. And in the plate of fruit, there was a mouldy orange. What does a mouldy orange give off? A dust. In that dust is its spore. But in that dust is a highly toxic gas designed to kill off food source. It's as if the mold says, this is my orange and no one else is going to get it. I'm going to give off a toxic gas. It settled down on his bacteria and killed it. So he called the mold penicillium. He called the mold waste penicillic acid. That penicillic acid is the penicillin we know today. Penicillin has saved the lives of millions, granted. But we've got a problem today. The problem is the overuse of the antibiotics, and the problem is the inability of the physician to investigate why is this out of control in the body. I've got a friend who's a physician, and she said, when you say to a person who's got a cold, now you've got to go home and have some hot lemon and honey drinks and eat lightly for a day and put your feet in hot water like our grandparents used to do, and she said, they don't want to know it. They just want the script. She doesn't give it to them, so they just go to a doctor who will give it to them. That's why we, the consumer, have power. You see, they'll never find a cure for the common cold. Did you know that in about the 1940s, the Common Cold Research Institute was set up in Salisbury in England to find the cause and the cure of the common cold? Well, after 40 years, they closed down in disgrace because they could not find the cause and the cure of the common cold, because a cold is a house clean. It's what it is. It's a house clean. What do you think all that mucus is that you're blowing out is? It's all the rubbish. It's a house clean. And if you handle it right, you'll be over it quickly. But if you do what the ad on the television is, take Codral, is it, and march on, yeah, you'll probably be coughing for a few weeks. And if you were ever a smoker, you'll probably cough for a few weeks after every cold. How else is the rubbish going to get out? You know, when you start coughing up green things, rejoice. Where was it before you coughed it out? That's all it is. But you've got to give it the right conditions. It'd be much easier if there was a hole in the side and it just ran out there, wouldn't it? But we've got to cough it up. I'm not against antibiotics. They save lives. But you know, most people should go through their whole life never having them. The human body can cope with about 2 courses in a lifetime. Did you hear that? 2 courses in a lifetime. My son James, how old was James? 40? I had tea with him last night. He's in Brisbane. Built like this. worked hard at building himself up. He's never had an antibiotic. How many 40-year-olds can say that? And yet James as a little boy used to get a lot of chest colds. I used to bind garlic on his feet and put charcoal poultices on his chest. You see, these are not the enemy. They're an integral part of life on planet Earth. And Antoine Beauchamp, he was a contemporary at the time of Louis Pasteur. He knew the true role. He's 6 times professor, this guy. He said, germs are born in us and of us. If they're in the body, you've got to find out why. They're just opportunist organisms. All Florence Nightingale did was cleaned up the hospital so there was nothing for these guys to do. That's why it's important to clean up the body. These microbes are not the enemy. When can they be the enemy? When there's so much filth that they just multiply. Florence Nightingale said she saw typhoid grow in a hut and no one took it in. Antoine Beauchamp, he got a dead cat one day. He put it in an airtight container. He came back 4 months later. Dust. What brought the cat back to dust? If the cat dies in the bush near us, the kookaburra will have a nibble and the dung beetles come up and the blowflies lays its maggots and all that helps with the breakdown of the cat. But this was an airtight container. So what brought cat back to dust? The body's own microorganisms that were an integral part of living, running cat. Upon death of the organism, had to take their suit of clothes off, so to speak, put their rubber gloves and apron on and become the clean-up team. Then the exterminators, then the undertakers, until eventually matter was back to dust. With great excitement, Antoine Beauchamp got the dust, put it under the microscope. It was alive with microorganisms. See, nothing's created and nothing's destroyed. It just changes form. And that's why we have compost bins. You look at the apple. Right now, the flowers are on the apple tree under the action of microorganisms. Then the apple develops under the action of the same microorganisms. But no one can eat the apple. It's too tart. It has to ripen. What ripens the apples? The same microorganisms. But no one eats the apple, so it rots. What causes the apple to rot? The same microorganisms. It's the cycle of life. And so now when the apple rots and falls to the ground, those microbes go into the soil. Now they play another role. And I'll draw one of the plants in my garden to show you. I put compost in my garden. When I put compost in my garden, I'm putting microbes in my garden. Now they play another role. They are responsible for the final breakdown of the minerals. They're responsible for the absorption of the minerals. They're responsible for the protection of the plant against any harmful pathogens that might be in the soil. And they are responsible partly for the nourishment of the plant. Now, the plant knows it needs those microbes for this, so 50% of the fuel that it makes from photosynthesis, it sends back down through the roots to the microbes to feed them. It's as if the plant says, please stay, I'll feed you well. It's the law of life. Do you know the law of life states that everything is taken with one purpose: to give. Everything takes only to give. That's the law of life. That's what the plant does. So can you see that these microbes, rather than being the enemy, we need them. In fact, if it wasn't for these microbes, there'd be so much rubbish on the planet, you wouldn't be able to walk on the planet. But they also play a vital role in the proper running of the human body, because those microbes are also living in the lining of our gut. Did you know there are 10 times more microbes in our gut than in our whole body? And there are 10 times more microbes in our body than cells. I can hardly get my mind around that number. And in the gut, they're responsible for the final breakdown of food, for the absorption of our nutrients, for protecting our blood against harmful pathogens and for the nourishment of the cells that line our gut. Now, I'm going to explore that in more detail on Thursday night when we take our journey through the gut. But it's another illustration to show you that these microbes are important. 1% of doctors today are claiming that antibiotics are causing more problems than they ever cured. What do they mean by that? Well, when you take an antibiotic, what are you taking into your body? A mold waste. 1.5 million different molds, yeasts and funguses they have documented. And 1,000 of those are known to cause disease in mankind. So what these 1% of doctors today are referring to, they're referring to the fungal or the mold link with disease. I have several books in my library at home from doctors, scientists, professors all over the world showing the fungal link with disease.